The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Ambassador Park stepped onto the gleaming white floor of Terminus Prime. The space station was the largest structure humans had ever seen. It floated at the center of the galaxy, a meeting place for hundreds of alien species. Today, it would host the most important diplomatic summit of the year. Took a deep breath and adjusted her formal uniform. She had prepared for this day for months. The territorial dispute between the Dominion and the Collective had brought the galaxy to the edge of war. Billions of lives depended on finding a peaceful solution. As Earth's representative, carried the weight of her entire species on her shoulders. A small hand tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, my shoes are too tight." Looked down at her daughter. Was 7 years old, with round cheeks and curious eyes that never stopped moving. She wore a simple blue dress and her hair was tied in two neat braids. She looked impossibly small in this vast alien place. "I know, baby. We'll fix them later, okay?" Nodded, but her attention had already moved to something else. She was staring at a group of delegates who floated past them. They were tall and thin, with bodies that looked like they were made of silver mist. They had no solid form and seemed to flow through the air like living clouds. "Mommy, are they ghosts?" Smiled despite her stress. "No, sweetheart, they're called. They're from a planet where everything is gas, so their bodies evolved differently from ours." "Can I touch them?" "Maybe later. We need to go to the assembly hall now." Should not have been here. The original plan was to leave her with Smother back in. But Grandmother Park had fallen ill just 2 days before the summit, and there had been no time to find another solution. The emergency session had been called without warning, had no choice but to bring her daughter along. She told herself it would be fine. The session would last a few hours at most. Was a good child, quiet and patient. She would sit beside her mother and draw pictures on her tablet while the adults talked about borders and treaties. Everything would be fine. The assembly hall of Terminus Prime was unlike anything on Earth. It was a massive sphere, larger than a football stadium, with no floor and no ceiling in the traditional sense. Instead, hundreds of floating platforms hung in the air at different heights. Each platform held delegates from a different species. Some platforms had water for the aquatic races. Others had special atmospheres for beings who breathed different gases. A few were completely dark for species that could only survive without light. Its platform rose smoothly through the air and settled into its assigned position. The human delegation was small compared to the older species. Only 12 representatives, including and her daughter. They were seated near the outer edge of the sphere, a reminder that humanity was still a newcomer to galactic politics. Pressed her face against the transparent safety barrier and looked down. The drop was hundreds of meters. Below them, she could see platforms filled with creatures she had never imagined. There were beings made of crystal that sang instead of speaking. There were insects the size of cars that communicated through complex dances. There was a single massive eye floating in a tank of yellow liquid, surrounded by smaller eyes that served as its translators. "Mommy, this is so cool." Placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Stay close to me, okay? Don't wander off." "I won't." The session began with a chime that resonated through the entire sphere. At the center of the assembly hall, a platform larger than all others rose into prominence. Standing on it was High Arbiter Hose, the leader of the Galactic Council. Hose was a crystalline, a species that had evolved on a planet of pure mineral formations. Their body was a complex geometric shape, like a three-dimensional puzzle made of glass. Light passed through them and scattered into rainbows. When they spoke, their entire body vibrated, creating sounds that the universal translators converted into words. "The assembly is now in session," Hose announced. Their voice was like wind chimes in a storm. "We gather today to resolve the dispute over Sector 743, claimed by both the Dominion and the Collective. This matter has caused tension for 30 cycles. Today, we will find resolution." listened carefully as both sides presented their arguments. They were a proud warrior species, with hard shells and powerful claws. They claimed the sector held valuable minerals that their empire needed to survive. They argued that the sector contained the birthplace of their species, a sacred site that could not be mined. Both sides had valid points. Both sides refused to compromise. As the hours passed, grew restless. She had finished all her drawings. She had counted all the different species she could see. She had made up stories about the strange creatures floating around her. Now she was bored. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Reached into her bag and pulled out a snack bar. "Here, eat this quietly." Took the bar but didn't open it. Instead, she watched a group of small creatures on a nearby platform. They looked like balls of fur with dozens of tiny legs. They were rolling around each other, making happy squeaking sounds. "Can I go see them?" "No, stay here." "But they're so cute." "I know, but we need to stay on our platform. It's not safe to wander around." Sighed and finally opened her snack bar. She chewed slowly, still watching the fur balls play. The debate continued. Voices rose and fell. Translators worked overtime to convert hundreds of languages into something everyone could understand. Took careful notes, looking for any opportunity to suggest a compromise that both sides might accept. She did not notice when finished her snack. She did not notice when stood up and walked to the edge of the platform. She did not notice when saw something moving in the lower levels of the assembly hall, something big and colorful that caught the light in beautiful ways. "Mommy, what's that?" Was focused on the delegate, who was showing holographic images of the disputed sector. "What's what, sweetheart?" "That big animal down there, the shiny one." Finally looked up. She followed's pointing finger down to the lowest level of the assembly hall. There, behind a shimmering containment field, she saw it. It was enormous, at least 3 meters tall, with 6 powerful legs and a body covered in scales that changed color like a living rainbow. It paced back and forth behind its energy cage, its 4 eyes scanning the crowd above. Even from this distance, could see its fangs, each one longer than her forearm. "That's said, trying to keep her voice calm. "They brought it as evidence. It's a predator from the disputed sector. They want to show how dangerous the region is." "It's beautiful." Looked at her daughter with surprise. Most beings in the galaxy would call the terrifying. Only a human child would call it beautiful. "It's very dangerous. Promise me you'll stay away from it." "I promise, Mommy." But's eyes stayed on the creature. She watched how it moved, how its scales shifted colors. She saw the way it pressed against the containment field, looking up at all the strange beings staring down at it. She thought it looked lonely. She thought it looked scared. Knew that feeling. She had felt it on her first day at school, when everyone stared at her and she didn't know anyone. She had felt it when her father died 3 years ago, and the world suddenly became too big and too empty. She wondered if anyone had ever been kind to the. Far below, the creature's scales flickered from blue to orange to red. It let out a low growl that vibrated through the assembly hall. Nobody paid attention. They should have. The warning came without any signal. One moment, the assembly hall was filled with the calm voices of diplomats arguing about borders and treaties. The next moment, every light in the sphere turned red. A sound like thunder rolled through the air. Every translator in the hall spoke the same words at the same time. "Containment failure. Category 9 specimen breach. All personnel evacuate immediately." His heart stopped. She grabbed his hand and pulled her close. Around them, chaos erupted. Delegates screamed in 100 different languages. Platforms began moving toward the exits, crashing into each other as their pilots panicked. They dissolved into clouds of frightened mist. The crystallines shattered into smaller pieces and rolled away in all directions. "What's happening?" shouted over the noise. looked down toward the lower levels. The containment field that had held them was gone. The energy barrier had simply vanished, leaving nothing between the deadly predator and the thousands of beings trapped in the assembly hall. The stood perfectly still for a moment. Its scales had turned completely red, the color of fire and blood. Its four eyes moved slowly, taking in the panic above it. Then it opened its mouth and roared. The sound hit like a physical force. She felt it in her chest, in her bones, in her teeth, screamed and covered her ears. All around them, delegates collapsed from the sonic assault. Some species were more sensitive to sound than others. The fur balls that had wanted to see earlier were curled into tight, unmoving spheres. Security drones appeared from hidden compartments in the walls. They were small machines, no bigger than a basketball, armed with energy weapons designed to stun dangerous creatures. 20 of them flew toward the imperfect formation. They opened fire. Blue energy beams hit them from all directions. The creature did not even flinch. Its scales absorbed the energy like sponges absorbing water. The beams simply disappeared into its body, making its colors glow brighter for a moment before fading back to angry red. The swatted at the drones with its massive tail. 3 of them exploded on contact. The rest scattered, trying to regroup for another attack. "We need to move," said. She pulled toward the center of their platform where the other human delegates were gathering. "Stay with the group. Don't let go of my hand." Their platform began to rise, heading for the nearest exit. But they were not the only ones trying to escape. Dozens of other platforms were moving in the same direction, creating a traffic jam in the air. The automated systems could not handle so many requests at once. Platforms collided. Delegates fell. The screaming grew louder. Below them, they had begun to hunt. It moved with terrible speed for something so large. Its 6 legs carried it across the floor of the assembly hall in great leaping bounds. It jumped onto a low platform filled with aquatic delegates, tearing through the water tanks with its claws. It grabbed a fleeing in its jaws and shook it like a dog shaking a toy. Turns face away. "Don't look, baby, don't look." But had already seen. Her small body trembled against her mother. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she did not scream. She did not cry out. She just held onto her mother's hand and watched with wide, unblinking eyes. High Arbiter Hose was trying to restore order. Their crystalline body blazed with light as they broadcast commands to the security systems. More drones appeared. Larger weapons emerged from the walls. A team of warriors in combat armor descended on cables from the upper levels. "Contain the creature," Hose commanded. "Use maximum force." The warriors were the best soldiers their species had produced. They had trained for years to fight the dangerous predators of their home world. They carried weapons that could cut through starship hulls. They moved with the discipline of beings who had faced death many times and survived. They killed 3 of them in less than 10 seconds. It happened so fast that could barely follow the movements. The creature seemed to flow like water, its body twisting in impossible directions. Its claws cut through armor like paper. Its fangs found gaps in their defenses. Its tail swept the survivors off the platform and sent them falling into the void below. The remaining retreated. Their discipline had broken. They were no longer soldiers, they were prey. "Why won't it stop?" someone on its platform asked. It was Dr. Minu, the human delegation science advisor. He was an old man with gray hair and kind eyes, but right now those eyes were filled with terror. They said it was sedated. They said it was safe. "Something went wrong," said. "The containment field, the sedatives, everything failed at once." "That's not possible. The systems have multiple backups." "Then someone made it happen on purpose." Minu's face went pale. "Sabotage." Did not answer. There was no time for theories. Their platform had finally reached the exit tunnel, but the entrance was blocked by a massive pile of crashed platforms. Delegates were climbing over each other, fighting to escape. The exit had become a death trap. "We have to find another way out," said. She turned to guide her delegation back toward the center of the sphere. Maybe they could find a service tunnel, or an emergency hatch, or anything that would get them away from the nightmare below. That was when she realized was no longer holding her hand. The blood drained from his face. She spun around, searching the crowded platform. She saw the other human delegates. She saw Dr. Minu. She saw the crashed platforms blocking the exit. She did not see her daughter. Yuna. Her scream cut through the chaos. Heads turned toward her, but no small voice answered back. No little girl pushed through the crowd to find her mother. Ran to the edge of the platform and looked down. Her eyes swept across the nightmare below, searching for a blue dress and two neat braids. She saw destruction. She saw death. She saw the tearing through another group of fleeing delegates. Then she saw her. Was standing on a platform 3 levels below, completely alone. The platform was damaged, tilted at a dangerous angle, its safety barriers broken. The child stood at the very edge, looking down at something. No, not something. Someone. There was a small alien lying on the platform near his feet. It was one of the fur balls from earlier, the cute creatures that had wanted to see. This one was injured, its tiny legs twitching weakly. It must have fallen from its platform during the panic and landed here. And Sweet Foolish Brave had gone to help it. Yuna, stay there, move. But did not hear her mother's voice. Or perhaps she heard it and chose not to listen, because at that moment the landed on the platform next to hers. The creature was less than 20 meters away from the child. Its scales pulsed with that terrible red color. Its 4 eyes locked onto the small human standing alone on the broken platform. Its lips pulled back, revealing rows of fangs that dripped with venom. It had found new prey. Screamed. She tried to jump from her platform, but strong hands held her back. Dr. Minu and 2 other delegates grabbed her arms, preventing her from falling to her death. "Let me go, that's my daughter, let me go." But they did not let her go. They held her tight as she fought and screamed and watched the monster approach her child. They took 1 step toward, then another. Its growl filled the air, deep and hungry and full of death. Finally looked up. She saw the creature. She saw its size, its fangs, its killing claws. She saw death walking toward her on 6 powerful legs. And she did not run. She did not scream. Instead, she picked up the injured fur ball and held it gently against her chest. Then she turned to face them directly. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The assembly hall fell silent. Every being in that vast sphere stopped moving, stopped screaming, stopped breathing. They all watched as a 7-year-old human child stood before the most dangerous predator in the known galaxy and spoke to it like it was a frightened puppy. They stopped walking. Its red scales flickered. And for the first time in 10,000 years of recorded history, the monster hesitated. Was not afraid. She knew she should be afraid. The creature in front of her was bigger than a car. Its teeth were longer than her arms. Its eyes looked at her like she was food. Every part of her brain screamed at her to run, to hide, to find her mother. But had learned something important in her 7 years of life. She had learned that fear was not always right. Sometimes the scariest things were actually the saddest things. Sometimes monsters were just lost souls who needed someone to be kind to them. She had learned this from a stray dog. 3 years ago, just after her father died, had found a dog behind their apartment building in. It was the ugliest dog she had ever seen. It had matted fur and broken teeth and scars all over its body. It growled at everyone who came near. The neighbors called it dangerous. They called animal control to take it away. But saw something different. She saw how the dog flinched when people raised their voices. She saw how it hid when cars drove by too fast. She saw the sadness in its eyes, the look of a creature that had been hurt so many times it had forgotten how to trust. So did something that everyone told her not to do. She sat down on the ground, 5 meters away from the dog, and she waited. She did not move toward it. She did not try to touch it. She just sat there, quiet and patient, day after day. On the first day, the dog growled at her for an hour before going to sleep. On the second day, it only growled for 30 minutes. On the third day, it stopped growling and just watched her. On the seventh day, it walked over and sniffed her hand. On the 10th day, it let her pet its head. By the end of the month, the dog followed her everywhere. It slept outside her door. It waited for her after school. It had become the most loyal friend she had ever known. Her grandmother had said it was a miracle. Her mother had said it was dangerous and foolish, but knew it was neither of those things. It was simply patience. It was kindness. It was showing a scared creature that not everyone in the world wanted to hurt it. Now, standing on a broken platform in the middle of an alien space station, looked at thee, and saw the same thing she had seen in that stray dog. Fear. The creature was not attacking because it was evil. It was attacking because it was terrified. It had been taken from its home, put in a cage, transported across the stars to a place full of strange beings and strange smells and strange sounds. It was surrounded by creatures it did not understand, creatures that shot at it and screamed at it and ran from it like it was a disease. No one had ever tried to be kind to it. No one had ever tried to understand. Decided she would be the first. "It's okay," she said again, keeping her voice soft and calm. The translator in her ear was useless here. They had no language that technology could interpret. But that was fine. Animals did not need words to understand. She lowered herself slowly to the floor, keeping her movements smooth and unthreatening. The injured fur ball in her arms made a small squeaking sound. She tucked it safely inside her jacket, where it curled into a warm ball against her chest. Then she sat cross-legged on the cold metal platform and looked at the ground. Never directly at a scared animal. Eye contact was a challenge. Eye contact meant threat. Instead, she looked at a spot on the floor near the creature's feet and let her body relax. Above her, she could hear her mother screaming. She could hear the gasps and cries of thousands of aliens. She could hear the hum of weapons being charged and the buzz of drones preparing to attack. But she did not look up. She did not move. She just sat and waited, the same way she had waited for the stray dog back in. The took another step toward her. Its scales still pulsed with red, but there were streaks of orange now, mixing in like paint on a canvas. Its growl faded to a low rumble. Its 4 eyes studied this strange, small creature that did not run, did not scream, did not attack. It had never seen anything like her. In 10,000 years of hunting and fighting and killing, no prey had ever simply sat down and waited. Prey ran. Prey fought. Prey begged for mercy in ways that could smell but not understand. This small thing did none of those. It just sat there looking at the ground, its body relaxed and calm and completely unafraid. Though was confused. It took another step closer, then another. Now it was only 5 meters away. It could kill this strange prey with a single snap of its jaws. It could end this confusing situation and go back to the simple clarity of the hunt. But something stopped it. The small creature smelled different from the others. It smelled like calm. It smelled like patience. It smelled like something they had not experienced in a very, very long time. It smelled like home. Back on Prime, in the jungle where there was born, there had been another creature. A small thing, not dangerous, not prey, just a harmless animal that lived near the river where they drank. That creature had never run from the. It had simply continued its business, eating plants and sleeping in the sun, completely unworried by the predator nearby. They had found that creature's presence strangely comforting. In a world where everything either hunted it or fled from it, here was one small being that simply existed alongside it. Not a threat, not prey, just another life sharing the same space. This small human smelled like that creature. This small human radiated the same energy of calm coexistence. The scales flickered again. Red faded to orange. Orange softened to yellow. Notice the change. She had been watching the creature's colors from the corner of her eye, the way she used to watch the stray dog's body language. She knew what changing colors meant. She had seen it in chameleons and octopuses on Earth. Colors meant feelings. Red meant fear and anger. Yellow meant uncertainty, curiosity, maybe even hope. She was getting through to it. Slowly, carefully, raised her head. She still did not look directly at the eyes. Instead, she looked at its chest, at the beautiful scales that shimmered and shifted like a living sunset. "You're so far from home," she said softly. "I know how that feels. After my dad died, I felt lost too, like I was in a strange world where nothing made sense anymore." The tilted its head. It could not understand her words, but it could hear the tone of her voice. Soft, gentle, kind. No one had ever spoken to it with kindness before. She continued. "What's your name? Do you even have a name? Probably not, right? The people who caught you probably just called you a monster or a specimen or something." She shook her head sadly. "That's not fair. Everything deserves a name. Everything deserves to be seen as more than just a thing." She thought for a moment. "I'm going to call you, it means star in Korean, because your scales shine like stars." The now named took one more step toward her. It was close enough now that could feel the heat radiating from its massive body. She could smell its breath, wild and strange, like the jungle it had been taken from. But she did not flinch. She did not pull away. Instead, she slowly raised her hand and held it out, palm up, the same way she had offered her hand to the stray dog years ago. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. No one is going to hurt you while I'm here." The creature's scales shifted one more time. Yellow faded to something new, something no one in the assembly hall had ever seen before. A soft, gentle, peaceful blue. The lowered its massive head until its snout was level with its outstretched hand. It was so close now that she could see herself reflected in its four enormous eyes. And then, with a gentleness that seemed impossible for such a deadly creature, the pressed its snout against her palm. Smiled. "See, we're friends now." Above them, the entire galaxy watched in stunned silence. 300 species, thousands of delegates, millions of viewers on the broadcast feeds that had been capturing the disaster. All of them saw the same impossible thing. A human child had done what 10,000 years of hunters could not. She had tamed the untamable. And she had done it simply by being kind. Ambassador Park had stopped breathing. She stood on the edge of her platform, held back by the arms of her fellow delegates, and watched her daughter pet a monster. Tears streamed down her face. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to run to grab her, to carry her away from danger. But she could not move. She could not even speak. Because what she was seeing was impossible. The creature that had just killed a dozen beings, the predator that they themselves feared, was sitting on the floor like an oversized dog. Its massive head rested on its front legs. Its eyes were half closed with contentment. Its scales glowed with that strange, peaceful blue color, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat, and was scratching behind what might have been its ears. "Good boy," the child said happily. "Or girl, I don't actually know, but you're being very good either way." They made a sound, not a growl or a roar, but something softer, a rumble that vibrated through the air like the purr of a giant cat. Its tail swayed gently from side to side, accidentally knocking a piece of broken platform into the void below. "I think it likes her," Dr. Minu whispered. His voice was filled with wonder. "I think it actually likes her." High Arbiter Hose had lowered their platform closer to the scene. The crystalline being's body flickered with colors that had no translation in any language. Shock, confusion, amazement, fear, all mixed together in a swirling rainbow of light. "This is not possible," Hose said. Their voice echoed through the silent assembly hall. "The cannot be tamed. It has been tried. For 10,000 years they have attempted to domesticate this species. Every attempt has ended in death. The creature has no capacity for bonding. It has no social instincts. It is pure predator, designed by evolution for nothing but killing." "Then how do you explain what we're seeing?" someone asked. Hose had no answer. On the platform below had shifted position. She was now sitting with her back against the side, using the creature's massive body as a backrest. The injured fur ball she had rescued was in her lap, its tiny legs twitching as it slowly recovered from its fall. "Don't worry, little one," said to the fur ball. "Won't hurt you, is nice." The apparently accepting its new name, turned its head to look at the small creature in its lap. The fur ball squeaked in terror and tried to burrow deeper into his jacket. "No," said firmly. She put a hand on the snout and gently pushed it away. "Not food, friend." The blinked its 4 eyes. It looked at the fur ball. Then it snorted softly and laid its head back down, apparently deciding that if said something was a friend, then a friend it would be. Finally found her voice. The child looked up at the sound of her mother's voice. Her face broke into a huge smile. "Mommy, look, I made a friend." "I see that, baby." His voice shook. "I need you to come back up here now, okay? Slowly, very slowly." Frowned, but is scared. "If I leave, the scary drones will hurt it again." "That's what I named it. It means star, because of the shiny scales." Looked at the deadly creature her daughter had named after stars, and felt something strange twist in her chest. It was not quite fear anymore. It was something else. Something that felt almost like hope. "Okay," she said slowly. "Okay, you can stay with for now. But I need you to do exactly what I say, all right? Can you do that?" Nodded seriously. "I can do that, Mommy." "Good girl." Turned to Hose. The High Arbiter was still staring at the scene below with undisguised shock. "We need to get down there," said, carefully. "No weapons, no sudden movements. If my daughter says this creature won't attack, I believe her." Hose turned their crystalline body toward her. "Ambassador Park, with respect, your child cannot possibly understand the danger she is in. That has demonstrated no capacity for peaceful interaction with any species. What we are witnessing must be some kind of temporary confusion, perhaps a result of the sedatives wearing off in an unexpected way." "Maybe," said. "Or maybe you've all been wrong about this creature for 10,000 years." "That is not possible. They have studied the extensively. They are the experts." "The hunted, though, they captured it. They put it in cages and transported it across the galaxy like cargo. That doesn't make them experts. That makes them enemies." Ho's colors shifted to something that might have been offense. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that my daughter approached this creature differently. She didn't see it as a threat to be contained. She saw it as a living being that was scared and alone, and she responded with kindness instead of force." "Kindness?" Hose made a sound that the translator rendered as disbelief. "You believe kindness can tame a Category 9 predator?" Looked down at her daughter, at the small girl sitting peacefully against the side of a monster. The image was so strange, so beautiful, that she felt tears forming in her eyes again. "Where I come from," she said quietly, "we have a saying, kill them with kindness. It means that sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy is to refuse to treat them as one." A poetic sentiment, but this is not poetry. This is a creature that killed 13 beings less than an hour ago. Because it was scared, because it was cornered, because everyone who came near it was either attacking it or running from it. Met Ho's flickering gaze. "My daughter did neither. She just sat down and offered her hand, and look at the result." Below them, the head rolled onto its side. was now scratching its belly, giggling as its legs twitched involuntarily. The sight was so absurd, so completely at odds with everything the galaxy knew about this species, that several delegates had started laughing in shock. "This is unprecedented," one of the delegates said. Their misty form rippled with confused colors. "In all our recorded history, no being has ever established peaceful contact with a... The very concept seems biologically impossible." "Maybe it's not biology," another voice said. It was the senior biologist, an old being with a shell and tired eyes. They had been watching the scene with an expression that might have been shame. "Maybe it's us." Everyone turned to look at the... "What do you mean?" Hose asked. The senior biologist was quiet for a long moment. Then they gestured toward and the with one claw. "We have always seen thee as monsters. From the first time our ancestors encountered them, we classified them as dangerous, as threats. We hunted them, captured them, studied them. We never once considered the possibility that they might be capable of anything other than violence." The old's voice dropped. But that human child, she looked at the same creature and saw something different. She saw a scared animal that needed help, and because she expected kindness, she received kindness in return. "Are you saying the respond to expectations?" "I'm saying that perhaps we created our own monster. We approached them with weapons, so they responded with violence. We treated them as beasts, so they acted like beasts. For 10,000 years, we never once tried what that little girl did. We never once simply sat down and offered our hand." The assembly hall was silent. 300 species, thousands of beings, all of them looking at a human child who had accomplished the impossible simply by being kind. And all of them wondering if the galaxy itself had been wrong. Wrong about predators. Wrong about monsters. Maybe wrong about everything. Smiled. "Humans come from a dangerous world," she said. "We evolved alongside predators that could kill us in seconds, but we didn't just survive. We made friends with them. We domesticated wolves and turned them into dogs. We tamed horses and cats and birds and even creatures that could poison us with a single bite." She looked at her daughter, at the miracle happening below. "We learned a long time ago that the line between monster and friend is often just a matter of perspective. And my daughter just proved that this lesson applies across the galaxy." Hose was quiet for a very long time. Their crystalline bodies cycled through colors that no translator could interpret. Finally they spoke. "Perhaps," they said slowly, "we have much to learn from humans after all." The day after the incident, the assembly hall was repaired and the summit continued. But nothing was the same. News of what had happened spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species with access to the broadcast network saw the footage. A human child, small and fragile, walking toward the most dangerous predator in the known galaxy. The creature's scales changing from angry red to peaceful blue. The impossible moment when the monster laid its head at her feet like a loyal pet. The story was told and retold in 1,000 languages. Scientists debated how it was possible. Philosophers argued about what it meant. Religious leaders called it a miracle sent by their gods. Children across the galaxy played games where they pretended to be the brave little human girl who tamed the unkillable beast. Herself did not understand what all the fuss was about. "I just talked to it," she told the crowd of reporters who surrounded her. "It was scared, so I tried to make it feel better. Anyone could have done that." But that was exactly the point. Anyone could have done that, but in 10,000 years no one had. The assembly reconvened 3 days later to discuss the situation. Ambassador Park stood on the human delegation's platform at her side. The child was drawing pictures on her tablet, completely uninterested in the political discussions happening around her. High Arbiter Hose called the session to order, but instead of continuing the territorial dispute, they raised a new topic. Before we proceed with regular business, the Council has decided to address the event that occurred during our last session. The actions of the Human Child Park have raised important questions about our understanding of dangerous species. We have invited the senior biologists to share their findings. The old rose on their platform. Their shell gleamed under the lights. Their compound eyes swept across the assembly with a weight of centuries behind them. "I have studied biology for most of my life," they began. "I thought I knew everything about them. I was wrong." The assembly listened in silence as they explained what their scientists had discovered in the days since the incident. They had run tests on the that had tamed. They had examined its brain chemistry, its hormone levels, its neural patterns. What they found had shocked them to their core. "The is not unintelligent," the senior biologist said. "Its brain is actually highly developed, with regions dedicated to social bonding that we never recognized before. These regions were always dormant in the specimens we studied. We assumed they were evolutionary leftovers like the human appendix. We were wrong." The old paused. "These social regions only activate in response to specific stimuli. Calm, patience, non-threatening behavior, kindness. For 10,000 years, no being ever provided these stimuli to until Park." The assembly murmured. This was revolutionary. This changed everything they thought they knew about predator species. "What this means," the senior biologist continued, "is that the is not a mindless monster. It is a highly social creature that has been treated as a mindless monster for so long that it forgot how to be anything else. We created the very danger we feared." They turned to look at, who had stopped drawing and was watching the old with curious eyes. This human child did not perform a miracle. She simply did what her species has been doing for thousands of years. She looked at a dangerous creature and chose to see potential instead of threat. And because she expected friendship, she received friendship. The old's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Humans come from a world more dangerous than Prime. Their planet is filled with predators, parasites, natural disasters, and diseases that would kill most species in the galaxy. By all logic, they should be fearful, paranoid creatures who attack anything that might threaten them." They shook their head in wonder. Instead, they are the exact opposite. They domesticated their predators. They turned wolves into loyal companions. They rode horses into battle. They kept poisonous snakes as pets. They cuddled with creatures that could kill them in their sleep. They developed an instinct for connection that defies all logic. The senior biologist looked at the assembled delegates. "I have spent my life studying dangerous species. I thought I understood what made creatures deadly, but I have learned something important from watching Park." They paused. "The most dangerous creature in the galaxy is not the one with the biggest fangs. It is the one with the biggest heart. Because that creature will reach into darkness and pull out light. That creature will walk toward monsters and make them friends. That creature will change the nature of the universe simply by refusing to believe it cannot be changed." The assembly was silent. Then slowly something unprecedented happened. Delegates began to stand. Platform by platform, species by species, the entire assembly rose to its feet. They were applauding. Not for though she deserved it, not even for humanity, though they deserved it too. They were applauding for a new idea, a new possibility, a new way of seeing the galaxy. Maybe there were no monsters. Maybe there were only creatures who had never been shown kindness. Maybe the galaxy could change. Ambassador Park felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the assembly honor her daughter, looked confused by all the attention. She tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why is everyone standing up?" Knelt down and hugged her daughter tightly. "Because you showed them something important, baby. You showed them that kindness is the strongest power in the universe." "Thought about this. Does that mean I can have a pet now?" Laughed, a wet, happy sound that echoed through the assembly hall. We'll see, sweetheart, we'll see. Far below the assembly, in a specially designed containment area that now featured open spaces and comfortable surfaces instead of bare metal cages, the that had named raised its head. Its scales pulsed with gentle blue light. It could not understand the sounds coming from above, but it could sense the change in the air. Something was different. Something was better. For the first time in its long, violent life felt safe. And somewhere in its newly awakened mind, in the social regions that had been dormant for so long, a simple thought formed. It was not a complex thought. It was not a philosophical revelation. It was just a feeling, warm and strange and wonderful. The feeling of having a friend. Lowered its head and closed its four eyes. Its scales settled into a calm blue glow, and for the first time in 10,000 years of history, the creature did something unprecedented. It fell asleep without fear. Above, the assembly session continued. Treaties were signed. Alliances were formed. The galaxy began to change, slowly but surely, one act of kindness at a time. And at the center of it all, a 7-year-old girl finished her drawing. It showed a colorful creature with 6 legs and 4 eyes, sitting next to a small figure with 2 braids and a blue dress. Underneath the picture, in clumsy Korean characters, she had written 2 words. Best friends. Looked at the drawing and smiled. Maybe that was what the galaxy needed. Not more weapons or treaties or borders. Just someone willing to sit down, offer their hand and say hello. Maybe that was humanity's gift to the stars. Not strength, not technology, not conquest. Just kindness. And the stubborn belief that every creature, no matter how scary, deserved a chance to be understood. Folded the drawing carefully and put it in her pocket. She would give it to later. She was sure the creature would like it. After all, that was what friends did. They shared things that mattered. And right now, nothing mattered more than the simple truth that it always known. Love was stronger than fear. Connection was stronger than isolation. And a single act of kindness could change the universe. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had known for thousands of years. Monsters were just friends who had not been met yet. And Park, 7 years old and completely unaware of her own importance, had just introduced the galaxy to its friend. Everything was going to be different now. Everything was going to be better. Because that was what humans did. They made things better. One friend at a time.